Minister Monsef, welcome. Before we begin, I just want to bring a motion. There's been a request for the Parliamentary Secretary to receive the Library of Parliament briefing notes for public meetings. So I would ask if there's a will on the committee to have that happen, that one of the committee members brings that motion. Moved by Pam Demoff that the Parliamentary Secretary receive Library of Parliament briefing notes for public meetings. All in favour? Opposed? Lovely. Great. Wonderful. And I understand that in addition to the Minister of Status of Women, we have today some visitors from Girls in the House. And I believe some of our committee members want to give a word of welcome to them. So we'll let Ms. Demoff begin.
I thought my microphone was going to come on automatically. This is a fabulous day. Not only do we have the Minister for the Status of Women here, but we also have a number of young ladies from the University of Toronto. And I can't think of a better day for you all to be here. But our committee is always an interesting committee. So I hope that this inspires you. And I'm fortunate to have two young ladies with me for the day. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy and are inspired and consider politics as a venue as you go forward in your career.
I am so proud today to have a young lady from U of T, and which was really interesting is she's actually from Texas originally. So from 4 years ago, she moved from Texas to Canada. So especially now as we're looking at different things with gender equality and things, it's great to have a really fresh perspective. So I'm very proud to have Madison Bruno here today from U of T, who is now living in the city of Toronto with her family. And I think this is a great opportunity for young women to see what you do in the House of Commons and what we can do as legislators. So I welcome everybody here today. And please ask any questions of all of us. It's really important that we see all perspectives when we're looking at women's equality on all the different issues. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
And Ms. Malcolmson.
Thanks, Chair. Women in the House is the program that University of Toronto and many other universities, McGill and Brock, both have brought here. So Women in the House, great program that's waving through a number of universities, and I'm very pleased to have Emily Wushnikowski with me today and appreciate the committee's welcome to these young women.
Very good. Well, welcome to all of you, and especially welcome to Minister Monsef. And we'll start with your opening remarks. You have 10 minutes. Okay. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, colleagues, friends, guests, allies. It's a great privilege to be in this room with you. This is the room I was sworn in, actually. And to be on this traditional territory of the Algonquin peoples is a reminder of the privileges we bring to this room, but also the responsibility that comes with all that privilege. And for your introductions, Madam Chair, colleagues, and your welcome to the young women who are part of a movement, I'd say, to make sure that the next generation of leaders who take up these seats have a good sense of what they're walking into. And so to that end, Madam Chair, I'm going to do my best to be as well behaved as I can possibly be. I'm also here with Mina Ballantyne, who is the head of Status of Women Canada, as well as Annick Lapointe, who's our Chief Financial Officer. As you know, we have an incredible team at Status of Women who have found all sorts of innovative and creative ways over the years to make sure that the women's movement and the commitment of the federal government is there improving the lives of women and girls. So I thought that in my remarks, Madam Chair, I talk about a few things. I tell you a little bit about me and the values that I bring to this work and why I'm even doing this work. Given that this is a really important opportunity for us to build a relationship that is mutually beneficial for us, but also for Canadians, I think that's really important. I'll talk a little bit about my mandate, and most importantly, and what I'd like to leave this room with, if you all agree, is a better understanding of how we can work together, how we can better align the work of the committee with the work that I've been mandated to do. And of course, answer any questions that you may have. So What an honor it is to be the Minister for the Status of Women in 2017. My predecessor, Minister Hajdu, has done excellent work, and it's a privilege to follow and to pick up where she left off, as well as lead the rest of the agenda that this government has. And I know that this committee is a unique committee. Not just because the chair is a member of Her Majesty's official opposition, but because I've been watching you long before I was actually the minister on this file, and the way that you work together is truly unique. I think there's a recognition amongst members around this table that the work of your committee, the issues that affect women and girls and people of different genders across the country don't really fit into any partisan lines. And I know that you've traveled through stories of individuals, especially survivors. Those stories weigh heavily on all of us, and we have a shared responsibility to honor them. So this unique committee, and the way that you're structured, the way that you work well together, is one other reason why I'm particularly excited to be part of this work. The work that you've done around gender-based analysis, around ending violence against young women and girls, that is critical to the work of the government. And I thank you for tabling your report recently. It was nice to see all of you on the cover of the Globe and Mail. Again, illustrating what I just talked about. It's a shared responsibility. So for me, I was raised by a single mom. Madam Chair, I'm an immigrant to this country. I've grown up on public transit and various public social safety nets that have allowed me to understand the challenges that people in a country as wealthy as Canada experience. And I come to this place with that humility. And also with a deep belief that in this country, anything is possible, that a single mom, given the right resources and supports, can raise 3 daughters in a community that welcomes them, and they can aspire to dream big and to make a difference in the lives of those who have helped them. My work has, like many millennials, involved a range of initiatives that have made a deep and quick impact in my community of Peterborough-Kawartha. So the same organization that allowed my family a safe roof over our heads in Peterborough-Kawartha, the YWCA, ended up being an organization that I was the vice president on the board for. And so being a part of that movement, the oldest and the largest women's organization in the country, there's a lot of collective wisdom there that I've benefited from. And it was actually the YWCA that afforded me the opportunity to go to the UN Commission on the Status of Women in 2013. And events came full circle just a week ago when members of this committee joined me at the 61st session of the UN CSW in New York. And it was so wonderful and empowering to have a number of you there experiencing the highs and the heaviness of that gathering. I've also had an opportunity to work with settlement agencies, and so the issues of migrant women have a particular special place in my heart, and mental health and mental illness, changing the stigma and the conversation around mental health is something that I was very much interested in university, and was part of a international movement of young people on campuses devoted to changing that conversation. So that's some of what I bring to this work, and I know each of us around this table has personal reasons why we're in politics and why we do this work, and I think that's a strength. In many ways, the goals that are laid out in my mandate letter are connected to what I've always believed in, that government policy, regulation, legislation can be and have to be sensitive to the different impacts they can have on women and men and people of different genders. But this is a goal that I know we can and have all come together to support, and much of the work that you've already undertaken, and I hope the work ahead is in line with my mandate letter. My work generally falls under three broad categories. The first is ending and preventing all forms of gender-based violence. Your report is an important aspect of that work. Secondly, it's focused on women's economic empowerment. So whether it's closing the wage gap, ensuring that more women enter STEM fields and other fields where they're traditionally not represented, ensuring more women entrepreneurs are leading the way, that's a critical part of the work that I do. And then the third part is leadership. So making sure that there's more diversity in places like this, making sure that Canada's corporate boards have more women around those seats. We know that greater diversity brings more relevant and responsive decisions and more innovation. So broadly, those are the three areas that I'm mandated to work on. And you saw in Budget 2017 that there's a commitment, and I'd say a major step towards gender equality in our country in that document. It includes the first ever gender statement as part of a federal budget and a gender-based analysis that has made a positive impact with over 60 different measures that the government prioritizes. It also builds on the work of 2016 by continuing to invest in actions that help reduce gender inequality, including housing, childcare, addressing gender-based violence, and it also makes those significant strides towards women's economic empowerment. $101 million over 5 years is what's invested in this budget to address and prevent gender-based violence. This funding will allow us to create a center of excellence on these issues and add a new survey and a new set of resources and data to help us better understand the current needs of Canadians in the immediate term. And we'll soon be announcing that strategy and the foundations that are going to make sure that we are successful. This will require engagement with provinces and with territories, but I don't need to tell you about the importance of doing that work because we know that for lasting change to occur, we need to work with everyone and engage them as part of the solution. I'll take the last 45 seconds to talk about the main estimates. $38 million is what Status of Women Canada has been provided with to carry out its activities, which are highlighted in the 2017-18 departmental plan. The majority of the agency's funds are targeted for grants and contributions, focused on those three areas of addressing and preventing violence, women's economic empowerment, and empowering women in leadership and decision-making. So, again, being the Status of Women Minister in Canada in 2017, being part of a government that is focused on gender equality and proud to call itself a feminist government is an honor. But with that honor comes a great deal of responsibility that I am well aware of, but I know that with the contributions and the dedications of people like the people around this table, that we can further the agenda of gender equality and make sure that Canadian women and girls and those of different intersecting identities feel more like they belong and feel more like they can fully participate. And Canada, as a result, I know will be strengthened. So thank you, Madam Chair. I am happy to answer any questions colleagues may have.
Thank you, merci. Nous allons commencer des questions avec Monsieur Serret pour 7 minutes.
Merci, Présidente. Merci pour votre bon travail.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your fine work with the committee. I'd also like to thank you, Madam Minister, for appearing today. Thank you for your approach and your message of cooperation and collaboration that we need to have with all political parties.
I'll utilize a quotation, and Madam Chair, you'll be happy here that it comes from the Strategic Partnership of Engineers of Canada, and it's Jeanette Southwood. She indicates, we are pleased to see that Budget 2017 plans to address gender-based challenges by closing the gender wage gap, expanding maternity leave options and implementing flexible work arrangements for federally regulated employees. So I wanted to ask, Madam Minister, can you expand on some of the highlights of the Budget 2017 yesterday?
Absolutely, and I thank my colleague for being one of those good men without whom the work of gender equality will not be as effective, and for being there at the UN Commission on the Status of Women. I was truly proud that there were over 200 of us there and that there were so many male allies as part of the Canadian delegation. I can tell you broadly a little bit about what this particular budget proposes, and what you see in the budget is a direct reflection of what we've all heard from Canadians and what history teaches us, that when you improve things for women and girls, you've improved outcomes for communities. When you enhance their economic potential, you've increased economic growth for everyone. So let's talk about the economic front. Investments in early learning and childcare to support access to childcare, to allow greater participation in work, education, or training for mothers, but also for fathers or parents of different genders will make a difference. It means that parents have that flexibility and the choice to focus on their families and their careers at the same time. We also know that aside from caring for their children, women are often the caregivers for other members of the family. You've heard from the sandwich generation often, I'm sure, people who are not only caring for themselves and their partners and their own children, but they find themselves in our aging society looking after their parents. And so a new EI caregiving benefit, which will allow more caregivers, the majority of whom are women, the ability to balance their work and family responsibilities is among the themes that we heard at the UN and we heard at doorsteps. And yes, the right to request flexible work arrangements for federally regulated employees, that flexible start and finish time, the ability to work from home, new unpaid leaves to help manage family responsibilities. These are about recognizing that the family dynamics in Canada have changed and will continue to change. This is recognizing that some children come home from school at 2:30, but the work hours don't end at 2:30, and parents want to see their kids grow up. Grandparents want to see their grandchildren grow up, and that flexibility and allowing that flexibility within federally regulated workplaces is the federal government taking the lead and leading by example, and recognizing that when people are experiencing healthier and happier home lives, that they're stronger contributors to their work life and to our economy broadly. There's also investment in innovation and infrastructure. There's investment in things like affordable housing and, of course, addressing and preventing gender-based violence. But these are a few of the highlights in the budget that we know will make a lasting impact.
Thank you. Also wanted to, and I'll comment, it was very worthwhile and educational and experience going to the UN and participating in this important debate that we're having here in Canada and also actually across the world. And I wanted to ask Madam Minister that to expand on your thoughts on how do we, because we've heard from several witnesses across Canada that came to our committee about the role of men and boys in this conversation. And I wanted you to expand your thoughts on that, please.
The feminist movement has been able to achieve incredible results. And changing the status quo, as I think all of us recognize around the table, is rarely easy. There's almost always tension and opposition, and there are days where, for every step forward, there are 4 steps back, but it is the people, and many of them are women within the feminist movement, who have kept this work alive, and they're the reason why we find ourselves in 2017 with a feminist budget. This is a direct result of their relentless and creative advocacy. But we know that the feminist movement can be strengthened further by ensuring that men and boys are part of this conversation. Growing up, I was surrounded by a lot of other single mothers, and these single mothers had sons and daughters, and those sons were just as important part of their mothers' lives as their daughters were. They were just as much affected by the struggles of their single parents as their sisters were. And that's one reason why we need to include boys in this conversation. And we need to do it at a young age, because young people today are brilliant, and in many ways they're growing up faster than they ought to. So I've seen in front of me boys grow up to be strong boys who respect and appreciate the work of their mothers, and then they grow up to be respectful partners and effective fathers, and what's better than that?
And that's your time. Now we'll go to Ms.
parliamentary.
Sorry, that's your time. We're going now to Ms. Vecchio.
Oh, may
for
I
7
ask,
minutes.
Madam Chair, then, if I ramble on, because I'm clearly passionate about this work and I'm at most charming self early in the morning hours, could you just wave at me and let me know that my time is up?
I will
would
do that.
appreciate
I will do that. I run a tight ship, as your folks will tell you.
Okay.
We'll go to Ms. Vecchio now for 7 minutes.
Perfect. Hi. First of all, thanks very much for coming here, Minister. There's a few things that I would like to say that I was very proud to see in the budget. I think that the money set aside for shelters under the housing is very important. We see that for both people with addictions and people fleeing violence. So I would like to commend the government on that. I think that was very needed, as well as the caregiver employment insurance. I think that 15 weeks is a very positive thing that will be given to people who need to stay home and take care of their critically ill families. So I do commend you on those 2 efforts. I do have a question responding to the parental leave. The parental leave, we heard last week from witnesses, actually I believe it was this week from witnesses, regarding top-ups. Now the parental leave is stating that it's going to be 33% of the actual employment insurance benefit. So we recognize the maximum benefit's $555 per week. So we have to see how little this money is going to be. I would like to know the government's plans on how, because we heard people say that there needs to be a top-up. How is the government planning on making this benefit? Since we talk about men wanting to take part of the parental, and that's what we're trying to do, but we're going to now be asking people to have 33% of their income. What are we expecting the private sector to do here? Because now there's the talk of a top-up, but the private sector cannot afford a top-up at that rate. So can you please give me, in short, precise, because I have quite a few questions, what are the plans for that?
There are quite a few questions, and I thank you. And I know that you've heard the stories of why this is important. We committed $90 million to the network of shelters across the country in the last budget, and the $11 billion investment in affordable housing is the natural next step, because we know that women, especially those who are fleeing violence, need more than just shelters, that having a safe, affordable roof over their heads is a key step towards their economic empowerment. And parental leave, absolutely. We know that the time to have with your family, the flexibility and the choice to take your time or go right back in the workforce, that's really important to Canadians. And we wanted to make sure that that's reflected in the framework that we've laid out in the budget. The details,
of that
have not been finalized, and I know that my colleagues, as well as myself, will be working to ensure that that's done right. As far as the private sector goes, these are the job creators, and I recognize that. And they're the ones growing our economy. The most that the federal government can do is create the conditions for that economic growth. But we also have heard from the private sector that what they cannot afford is leaving half of our population on the sidelines. And I know that they appreciate the leadership that the federal government is showing, and they recognize that ultimately it's good for their bottom lines as as well.
Okay. Moving on to Bill C-337, which is the JUST Act that was put forward by Rona Ambrose. First of all, I would like to know where you stand on this and how you will be voting on Bill C-337, since we recognize that it came through many of our recommendations from the Violence Against Women study. I would like to have your thoughts quickly on that, please.
Thank you, and I always applaud any member in the House who's going to bring forward private members' bills that are going to further gender equality, and I certainly thank Ms. Ambrose for her work. We all know that survivors of sexual assault need to be treated with compassion, that respect is critical, that ensuring that their dignity is intact is critical to how they feel they're treated, but also whether other women and girls who experience that violence feel like they can come to authority figures and seek justice. And so I'm incredibly pleased to get that this bill will give us an opportunity to discuss this issue. You saw in the budget that lifelong learning for everyone, people of all sectors, is a priority for us, and that includes the judiciary, but we also know that an independent judiciary is fundamental to Canada's democracy, and that it's separate from executive and legislative branches. So we actually have no jurisdiction to mandate this training. So I'm looking forward to the work that this committee is going to do to review it, to study it, and look forward to watching the bill be presented in the House and making a thoughtful decision then.
Okay. Moving on, a couple different things. We see that there's going to be 17 people in the next year being hired, as well as 20 more in the next year for the status of women. 17 planning on being hired this year, and plus an additional 20. What I would like to know is what specifically are going to be the roles, and what are the performance indicators, especially when we're also looking outside of these regional offices. We see that we're going to be, when we're looking at this budget, the estimate shows more money is going to be spent in the department, and that there is a small decrease that will be going to the actual groups and associations that provide the frontline work. So can you please advise to me what the plans are so that we can make sure the money is being effectively or being used the most effective, and that we're actually having results, and how will you be coming up and presenting those results?
Well, as you know, the government is focused heavily on deliverology and a results-based approach, and that's certainly what I've been taught. So we'll be coming to this committee, as we have, with those indicators, frameworks, and deliverables. And as you know, there were 10 years when these organizations that you're talking about were starved. They didn't have the adequate funding. Those who were advocates for the vulnerable populations that they serve, they were penalized. They were not allowed the same funding opportunities that those who didn't were allowed, and that the regional offices were closed. So part of the reason for enhancing the capacity of Status of Women is to catch up with 10 years of cuts that hurt women.
Right.
As far as the work
Okay.
of these of these organizations, over 300 were supported with Status of Women last year. The money that you see there is going to be going mainly to the Center of Excellence, the data aspect, something that I know you heard from stakeholders across the country.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question because my time is becoming very low.
That evidence-based approach is going to serve these organizations really well.
Thank you. So,
Pardon?
Moving on to the next question, because I only have so little time. And this is going to be a little bit more specific. So the Prime Minister has said multiple times in response to questions about President Trump's immigration policy that he wouldn't want to interfere with the independent, sovereign goings-on of another country. He wouldn't want to dictate policy to another independent country. Though a week and a half ago, as I was leaving a caucus meeting, I was scrummed on $650 million that's going out to remove judicial and legal barriers in other countries. Some of these barriers are very concerning to Canadians, and I want to know, when it comes to the fact that in one way he's saying we will allow sovereign countries, what are your feelings on this when the Prime Minister says one thing but is actually doing the exact opposite with some of these funds?
I'm sorry, that's your time. We'll move now to Ms. Malcolmson for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being here. I know your heart is in this work, and I do appreciate the budget naming the problems of gender equality, but I'm so sorry that the concomitant action of naming those problems isn't there. We don't see funding for pay equity legislation and implementation. We had the grassroots alternative budget request investment in a national action plan to end violence against women and to make this investment proportionate to the cost and consequence of gender-based violence. Their recommendation was $500 million a year, and that it fund uniform access to domestic violence support, prevention, courts, sexual assault, crisis centers, all of it. And instead, we ended up with $100 million over 5 years only. And we know the cost of domestic violence is $12 billion. So, I know we're going to get a chance to talk about this more, but I just need to say I wish there was more oomph. We've been hearing a lot in the context of our economic justice for women study that this committee is doing about the benefits of a good childcare system, and we heard this every day last week at the United Nations, where I was very glad to be part of your delegation. Every expert here has been saying if we invest to get strong childcare system, then we can get more women to work who want to be. And we had Professor Pierre Fortin just on Tuesday say for Quebec that their childcare model generated $900 million in revenue just by virtue of mothers getting to work. But in this budget, there's not a penny of funding for childcare for this coming budget year. And the budget increases funding by only $5 million between 2019 and 2020, and then there's no increase in 2021 and 22. We had the Child Care Advocacy Association of BC say that they thought a budget commitment of $7 billion over 10 years is far below what's required to develop a system, and the CCPA budget, they called for 1% of GDP, and this is apparently an international measure. That they called for $600 million this year and then $1 billion more every year in the future until that 1% threshold is met. So can you talk with me about why the budget isn't on track to meet that 1% of GDP spent on childcare, that being the new standard for developed countries?
Madam Chair, I want to thank my colleague for joining us in New York and for all the ways that she's worked to advance gender equality in Canada under different governments and different value systems. Pay equity, as you know, there was a committee of the House that did really great work around pay equity. And the government's on board. I know some members of that committee are around this table, and my colleague, Minister Hajdu, and I are committed to making sure that the legislation that we introduce in 2018 is thoughtful. We know that it's a complex issue that's going to have various consequences, much of which are going to be positive, but we need to make sure that we get it right, and that's what we're committed to. And I know that it will be transformative, the work that we do. As far as the violence against women focus with the gender-based violence strategy, we know that there are provinces and territories out there. You were there for the presentation at the UN with our colleague from the Yukon. We know that some of the provinces and territories are leading the way, that they've had to step up and take the lead. And they're doing really good work. And part of what the strategy that we will be working on together, part of what it will allow us to do is to work with them, to learn from them, and to share those best practices around the country. But we know that over and over again, what we heard across the country, what you've heard, is that the federal government plays a really important role in coordinating its own services across departments. Right now, as we've walked in, there's a silo effect happening where different departments are working towards the same noble goal, but those efforts aren't always coordinated. And we're going to be getting our own house in order. I think that's really important. But we also know that the government can play a critical role, and we heard this over and over again from stakeholders in data collection and gathering the evidence that is so badly missing right now. And this evidence, this focus on research in this center of excellence, sharing best practices across the country, a one-stop shop, if you will, is going to be laying the foundation for the work that we have to do to get to that place where no woman or girl or anyone of different genders has to struggle with gender-based violence. And there's a lot of work to do. But I know that that $100 million isn't the only way that we're going to address and prevent gender-based violence. The investment that you saw, the $11 billion in housing, is going to be fundamental. We know that one of the reasons women, for example, don't leave abusive relationships is the fear of losing that safe roof over their heads. The childcare focus, I know that it's not everything, but $7 billion over 10 years is significant, and it's going to make
With respect,
a
though,
positive
Minister,
impact.
it doesn't start for 2 years. So this is, we don't want to see this as part of the re-election platform. We want to see the result right now. I'm going to take you to another question about shelters. 5 shelters over 5 years on First Nations reserves has been loudly identified as inadequate, and we didn't see any new funding for reserve shelters or new operation funding for shelter operations. And I know the operations issue is a very pressing one for these frontline services, women and men that are providing shelter around the country. Can you tell me about your commitment to increase funding for domestic violence shelters?
So there was $90 million invested in shelters across the country in 2016 budget.
That was the last budget, right?
Correct. And no budget is just a one-time hit on its own, if you will. Each budget builds on the next. And Budget 2017 is about building on the work of the previous budget.
And is there new money this year in this budget?
The focus on Indigenous peoples of this land. The relationship is paramount to our government. It's a relationship that was broken and that we're working to rebuild. We've seen unprecedented investments in various infrastructure needs across Indigenous communities. There's been a 27% increase. I know during the election, the 2% cap was a topic of great contention and disappointment, and we've addressed that by enhancing 20 to 27%. And I want to say this, Sheila, that I think that we have a lot of work to do, but I know that we are on the right track. And I know that it's because of people like you who are restless, just as I am, who push us to do more, that we're going to be able to do more.
We'll start with Ms. Ludwig.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. And first of all, I'd like to compliment you on your outfit.
Well, you know, I enjoyed our phone conversation earlier this morning where we coordinated this.
We did it. I'm very, very pleased with the work of this committee. And also, I'm very proud of the government in terms of the budget and what has taken place looking at feminizing the budget and the outcomes from it. So a couple of questions. The first one is, last week I was very honored and fortunate to attend the UN Convention on the Status of Women. And one of the sessions I attended was violence against women in politics. And certainly the outcomes and the research from that is very, very concerning, but something that we all need to be conscious of. So 2 questions regarding that. How closely does your department collaborate with the other departments, such as international trade, small business and tourism, immigration, defense, and veteran affairs, specifically looking at the cross-cutting approaches to policies and legislation that were identified as a priority at the conference last week?
Thank you for being part of that delegation, and I know that those of us who were there as part of the Interparliamentary Union's presentation of the violence that women in politics experience around the world, we were moved by the discussion. There were 6 ministers from Canada around that table, and regardless of the regions we hail from, this is an issue that we know in Canada we can do more to address. And we know that if we want to encourage the next generation of leaders to come to this place, but also to stay and to keep serving their communities, we need to do more to enhance the ways that we conduct ourselves in this place and the overall aggression levels that we understand take place. The work that Status of Women does is a horizontal approach. And so one of the ways that we make sure that we're involved in every department's policies, programs, and legislation is by making sure that a GBA plus analysis is conducted on every item that comes across the cabinet table. This means that our phones are ringing off the hooks in a way that I understand have not happened in over 20 years, with different departments understanding how critical the GBA plus analysis is to have their their proposals received at the cabinet table. And so they want to make sure that they get it right. And I know that we'll be coming to you with an interim report on how we're doing there. But we work across departments because there's an understanding with the Prime Minister, with Cabinet, with all our caucus colleagues, frankly, and I think members from different sides of the aisle, that everything that we do has a gendered impact. That's what the gender statement in the budget is about, is different policies affect women and girls and people of different genders differently. So that's one way. The gender-based violence strategy is a collaborative effort between over half a dozen ministers and departments, and that's the only way that it's going to work, because women's lives are dynamic, and the different services and programs and supports that they need have to be just that.
Okay, thank you. And continuing on with that, Minister, is there a role or is there a vision in terms of education and awareness for the general public of why it's important and the benefits of having women in positions of leadership? Because we've certainly heard from witnesses before this committee that have talked about companies on the Toronto Stock Exchange that have women in senior leadership positions tend to have greater annual revenues than those that do not. But certainly looking at it, it's not just about putting women in place just because, but there's a real economic benefit to it. How could you help us, or how could we help you and help all of us as Canadians get that message out so people see the true benefits of putting women in, offering them opportunities for leadership?
Thank you for that. C-25 is a bill that's gone through part of its movement through the House. It's with committee right now, and part of it is addressing just that, to ensure that we do better than having 1 out of 5 seats filled by men around corporate board tables, because we know that when there are more women around those tables, we make better decisions. And I'll be working with Minister Baines on that, and I know that colleagues in the House will significantly, and committee will make sure that it's the best bill that it can be. We hosted Canada's Daughters of the Vote here on Women's Day. Those 338 young women, and their passion and their knowledge and their talent and their respectful ways that they conducted their debates and dialogue, that's a reminder of why we need more diversity in this place. And you know, we've been working on various initiatives, and there will be a lot of work ahead of us. But one thing that I believe in, and I know members around this table believe, is that those of us who are here, women or men, we have a responsibility to the next generation of leaders who are watching us, who are paying attention not just to what we're doing and how we're spending, but how we conduct ourselves here. And we have a responsibility with the ways that we behave, with the words that we use, that we have that responsibility as leaders to lead by example, and to make sure that the culture shift that needs to happen, that we are positive contributors to that culture change. And so these are some ways.
How would you relate that to modernizing Parliament?
Pardon me?
How would you relate what you just those examples in terms of a vision towards modernizing Parliament?
Well, when the fathers of Confederation worked to do the work that they did to bring us to this point, I'm not sure that they were imagining 338 young women in Parliament. But Canada has changed, politics have changed, and we need to evolve if democracy is going to be relevant. And we've seen many occasions that are demonstrative of why we need to change, why something has to give. And I'm thankful that we have an opportunity before us as a House, as leaders who lead by example, to have a thoughtful, respectful conversation about how we can make sure that that evolution takes place so that not only this is a healthier workplace for us, but for the next generation of leaders who walk into these halls.
Great, thank you.
Very good. Ms. Harder for 5 minutes.
As you're aware, your mandate letter says that you're supposed to implement a policy or a strategy with regards to violence against women. Further to this committee, of course, we put a report forward with regards to that. Now, this is an issue that, of course, I am very passionate about. And one of the things that is rarely discussed is a report that came out in 2012 from the Canadian Medical Association. And in this report, they actually talk about gender-selective abortion. So they talk about here in Canada, there are actually upwards of 2,000 abortions that are committed every year in order to essentially get rid of girls. Now, I would say that this is actually gender-based violence targeted at little girls, preborn girls. And so I'm wondering if you agree with this statement.
Your statement being what?
Is this violence? Does it fit within your mandate?
I believe that violence comes at a spectrum, that it can be
it's actually a really
physical,
simple question. It's
that
just
it
yes
can
or
be
no.
psychological, that it can be emotional, and that it can be cyber.
So in this case, do you believe that this is discriminating against girls?
I believe, so I think what you would like to speak to me about is abortions, and I believe that women have a fundamental right
I'm asking
to be able to
about
control
gender-selective
their
abortions, which
reproductive
were
health and
identified in
rights.
this report.
Sorry, I didn't hear anything you said because I was answering your question.
You weren't answering my question, actually. You were avoiding it. Do you believe that sex-selective abortions, as identified by the Canadian Medical Association in 2012, are gender-based violence? Yes or no?
I believe that any sort of gender-based violence is wrong. I understand that women and girls in Canada are vulnerable to all sorts of forms of violence.
Thank you, Minister.
And preventing that violence is a shared responsibility for us all. I also believe the importance of giving women choice.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So my next question has to do with another question or another statement within your mandate letter. It says that one of the things that the minister, you, are intended to or called to fight for is, of course, gender equality. And within that, it explicitly states that you're actually mandated to include, it says, involve men in gender equality. That's a direct quote. Now, you put an interesting post up with regards to Sharia law and a wedding, and you said, isn't it interesting that there's no men here? And then you said, Sharia law fascinates me, with a smiley face. Now, these posts would appear to make light of the fact that Sharia law is actually incredibly violent against women and discriminates against them. And the fact that you're actually pointing out that there are no women in this room actually tells me that you yourself are noting this, but making light of it. How is this advocating for involving men in this problem with regards to gender-based equality?
So firstly, thank you for allowing me an opportunity to acknowledge my parliamentary secretary, Terry Duguid, who is demonstrative of all the ways that we can enhance the work of gender equality when we include men and boys. Having a feminist prime minister who is leading the first gender statement in the budget is a really good reminder of why we need to include men and boys. As far as the tweet from 2012 that...
Madam Chair, can I just get a point of order? I'm not sure what any of this question has to do with status of women or what we have the minister here for today.
I believe that there are questions that are allowed to be asked on any of the topics that would fall under the status of women's mandate letter.
But this doesn't fall within status of women's
well,
mandate.
I think I'm going to allow the answer to the question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to answer. My colleague is referring to a tweet from 2012 when I noted just that isn't it fascinating that in a conversation...
My question is simple. It's actually yes or no. Do you
like me
believe
to...
that this advocated for
Madam
gender
Chair,
equality?
I'd love to answer my colleague's question if she'll allow me.
Yes, I think you should answer the question, please.
Okay. So the observation that I made was just that. Isn't it fascinating that there's not a woman around that table to be part of that very important
Thank
conversation?
you very much. I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to ask a question with regards to the estimates.
So you didn't want me to answer
Madam
the
Chair,
question?
Madam Chair,
One of the
if you
things-
said that she can answer the question, I think we should allow her to answer the question. then.
She may answer for 20 seconds, and that's all the time.
Okay, and my commitment to women and girls and gender equality, Rachel, is apparent. And one of the reasons I'm here today is because I know there are challenges across all cultures when it comes to gender equality. One of the reasons I'm here today is because I'm a reminder, as I look at my mother even, of what can happen when women are given opportunities to succeed.
Thank you, Minister. I want to thank you again for being
Do you have any
willing
other
to appear
questions?
before the committee. We're out of time, actually. So thank you again
Madam
for
Chair,
appearing. Yes.
I don't think the session started until 9 o'clock, so I think we still have 15 minutes.
We had asked for the minister to be available till 9:45. I'm not sure what her schedule is. Are you willing to stay for another 10 minutes or so?
If you have more questions, absolutely.
All right, very good. Then we'll go to Mr. Fraser for 5 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here, Minister. It's been a pleasure to work alongside you and to get to know you over this past year and a half. One of the programs that I wanted to get you to elaborate on, given your own life experience, is the Canada Child Benefit. I know in my own riding we saw in a single month approximately $4 million invested in families that I represent. When I went through Budget 17, there was an interesting pie graph or pie chart there that highlighted the fact that 65% of the people who qualify for the full amount under this are single parents. And of those 65%, 90% are single mothers. Could you elaborate on the importance of this policy to helping families and in particular single mothers in the communities that you and I represent?
So thank you, and for all your great advocacy on behalf of Atlantic Canada. I can tell you that the Canada Child Benefit is an example of how Budget 2017 is building on the work that we began and prioritized in Budget 2016. We know that under the previous proposed child benefit plan, that single parents like mine would not have benefited. These are often the parents who need the most support and the greatest hand up. They're the ones who are often choosing between a safe roof over their kids' heads or good food on the table. And those aren't choices that women and parents in Canada should be making, but they are. What we know the Canada Child Benefit is doing right now is lifting 300,000 Canadian children out of poverty. And those children are going to have a better start because of that focus. And these children have mothers. These children have parents who care for them, who dream better lives for them. And one way that we can make sure that they get a solid start is by making sure that their parents at the end of the month aren't worrying about whether or not they'll have the dollars to put their kids in after-school programs or buy back-to-school clothes for their kids or supplies or food or camp opportunities over the summer. This program gives parents that flexibility.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. To me, it's a tremendous social policy innovation that really helps the people that I represent. I wanted to follow up on a conversation I actually had with one of your officials shortly before we started. We've heard in the corporate context during one of our current studies on women's economic security and participation in the Canadian economy that when you have a, not necessarily gender parity, but representations from different genders, you start to see a difference in the quality of decisions that are being made. I'm wondering if you can speak to how gender parity in Cabinet has led to this gender lens being applied to the budget, because when I see the infrastructure investments that aren't all just for water pipes this time around, but are on things like childcare facilities that are going to give 40,000 children access to childcare, or things like housing that are going to allow women fleeing domestic violence to have a safe roof over their heads. Can you tell me how gender parity contributed to the discussions to ensure these investments impact men and women in a positive way?
Well, firstly, being a young woman in politics and finding myself around that cabinet table, it's inspiring to see my colleagues around that table, these strong women, compassionate women leading and advocating for Canadians. And research has shown that whether it's politics or STEM fields, the more young women and girls see people like them in these positions of power and influence, the more likely they are to be able to see themselves in those positions. And you're right, the gender-based lens that you see in our policies has something to do with the feminist approach that our government takes. But I also want to let you know that the people who are around that table are bringing a range of experiences and intersecting identities. Minister Heidi, for example, her work in running a homeless shelter, as well as being raised by a single mom and being a single mom herself, brings a really interesting lens among all the other ways that she's a dynamic person to that table. A feminist prime minister who has so much respect for his partner and his mother, and his focus on things like youth advocacy and mental health, they've been shaped by those experiences. And so whether it's those of us who are settlers to this country, whether we are Indigenous to this land like Jody Wilson-Raybould is, each of us bring intersecting identities and experiences beyond our gender identity that I think are serving Canadians well, and we need to see more of that across tables across the country. I met with folks from the Bank of Canada, for example, and they are, as a corporation, working to enhance the diversity around their board tables because they recognize that that's how innovation happens, that's how creativity happens, and that's how they can become an even more attractive workplace for others, and ultimately it will help their bottom line.
Excellent. Do I have additional time?
No, you do not.
Thank you, Minister.
In fact, you're over. I did confer with the clerk, and there is not really a limit on what can be asked, and so as long as it's cordial and respectful, Ms. Harder for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My next question here has to do with the budget, the supplementary estimates. I'm hoping that you can answer precisely and quickly, if you don't mind. With regards to grants and contributions, now you said the majority of the funding is going to this area. That's true, but what I notice is actually from year over year, 2016 now into 2017, the amount that are given to grants and contributions, which of course we know actually support the programs that are taking place in the community, it's actually coming down slightly by about $100. So there's no meaningful increase to this category. Can you help me understand that, please?
So our grants and contributions have remained at around 19 million since 2009, and the decrease that you see is because of the variance in the action plan for violence against Indigenous women and the plan for women and entrepreneurs. The increase in operational funding mainly supports women by strengthening the status of women, to our capacity to expand our regional presence. As you know, we went from having 4 offices across Canada to 15, and to invest in research and evaluation of gender-based analysis.
My question is with regards to the grants and contributions.
Sorry, say that again.
My question is with regards to the grants and contributions, and I don't see any meaningful increase there. You used it as a boast point before in your opening statement, and so I'm just wondering why I don't see an increase there if that's so important to you.
Well, it continues to be important to me, and I also know that we're increasing grants and contributions to different programs that will improve the lives of women and girls.
Okay.
One of them is the Promo Science program that's going to receive $10.8 million over 5 years, starting in 2017-18, which supports organizations that offer
Minister,
opportunities
respectfully,
for
I'm going to
youth,
cut you off there.
particularly
Thank you.
young women and
Thank
girls.
you.
So that's an increase.
So I think essentially what I'm hearing you say is that you're shuffling the money around, but there's
Nope.
no meaningful
Nope.
increase. My next
That's not what
question
I'm
has to
saying.
do with internal services. Now, we know that the former minister put about $1 million into office renovations. I see that you now have plans for internal services to increase your budget by another $2 million. What further renovations do you have planned?
I'm not sure, but it will go through the proper channels, and we'll make sure that you're kept in the loop as need be.
I'm sure you will. All right, I'm going to share the rest of my time with Karen.
Hi, and I just want to go back to the question that I had started off with regarding the Prime Minister and his immigration policies towards the United States. but the $650 million that he's going to be using to change some of the judicial and legal barriers in other countries. Now, specifically, I'm going to ask this because we recognize and we have heard through not only media, but some of this money will be used to go to organizations. Now, first, I'm going to premise that I am pro-choice, but we recognize that much of this funding is going to go where countries, 125 countries where abortion is illegal, and the money is going to go there for advocacy for better rules for abortion. So I want to hear from you specifically that money will not be going to advocate for pro-choice efforts, although it's fine for this country, but other countries actually where it's illegal. I want to make sure that our money is being used efficiently to help children, to help mothers, to help, we had a great maternal and parental care. I want to make sure that our money is being spent appropriately and respecting the sovereign nation rules and laws of those countries. So can you please specify
So as you
that?
know, my colleague Marie-Claude Bibeau consulted with the international community, and they highlighted the need for sexual health and reproductive rights as the way that Canada could step up on the international stage, because we know unless women have sovereignty over their bodies, that empowerment economically or around leadership is nearly impossible. That $650 million is going to go to countries for not just abortions where it's legal, but it's going to things like education, information, contraception, and this is what the international community has asked us for, and those who were at the UN saw the incredible way that this announcement was received. It allows countries to focus on other things that their communities desperately need to ensure that their women and girls and communities achieve their full potential.
So there will be not one dime of Canadian taxpayers' money to go against the laws of other countries, is what you're saying?
I think that if you have further questions about sexual health and reproductive rights and our international development aid, that consider talking to Minister Bibeau about her efforts and how she particularly intends to continue her good work.
Okay. More time? Okay.
Go to Ms. DeMoff for 5 minutes.
I'll pass over to Ms. DeMoff, but I just want to remark on that particular comment. One of the reasons that I ran is because I had staff when I was working with the UN in Africa, and one of the young women there told me that there was a double standard, that she had studied in Canada and she knows Canadian women have reproductive rights, and when some of that funding was cut, she said, I am so ashamed because you're saying that Canadian women have rights, but us African women are not good enough to have reproductive rights. And I think that we really do, I'd like the Minister to address that last comment made by Ms. Vecchio in that regard, that rights are rights, and reproductive choice is something that is important for all women, whether they are Canadian or whether they are in other countries, that's something our government supports. I'd love to have the Minister respond to that.
I agree. There's a great woman who said, unless all of us are free, none of us are free. And one of the conversations I had with my colleagues from the American countries while I was in New York was around just that what's happening in Brazil, what's happening in Mexico, what's happening in my ancestral land of Afghanistan, and what's happening here in Canada. We are all parts of the same humanity, and when one of us is hurting, all of us are hurting. Canada, as a founding member of the United Nations, is going to be there. And we're going to remain at the forefront of ensuring that women and girls everywhere reach their full potential. And our focus on reproductive rights, health rights, and having that choice has been clear to Canadians since before we got elected. And we're going to continue to illustrate that commitment through our actions as well as our international commitments.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I know that you're a very passionate advocate for people living with disabilities, and in your previous role, we met with a few groups who spoke to you about challenges that people have living with disabilities. And just recently at the UN, we had a conversation about employment for women living with disabilities, because as we know, the unemployment rate for them is about 75% and their income is quite low. So I wondered if you could just take a moment to speak about some of the initiatives that you're looking at to deal specifically for women living with disabilities.
Thank you, Pam. We know that 60% of those living with disabilities are vulnerable to gender-based violence. We know from our own personal and professional experiences that people with disabilities and exceptionalities bring gifts and talents to organizations and communities that aren't always utilized, and as a result, we're not as strong as a nation as we can be. We also know that my colleague, Carla Qualtrough, the minister responsible for disabilities in sports, has been actively connecting with Canadians across the country in her consultations to develop Canada's Disability Act. And I believe this legal framework will make a significant impact in the lives of Canadians whose talents and contributions have not had their full platform in Canadian society. And I also want to let you know that the GBA Plus lens that we put on every policy, legislation, and program that the government reviews, that plus includes persons with disabilities and exceptionalities, but because we know that our programs and our decisions affect different people differently, and that there's going to be a different impact on persons with disabilities and exceptionalities.
Thank you. How much time have I got left? Because I didn't start my timer.
Yeah.
Very quickly, I wonder if you could just expand on how we've improved our GBA Plus analysis within the government.
Well, over 60 measures in this very feminist budget are a direct result of a thorough gender-based analysis with that plus sign on it. It's no accident that housing is such a focus in this budget. It's no accident that caregiving is such a focus in this budget. It's no accident that Chapter 5 is focused entirely on a gender statement and an analysis of how women and girls in Canada are faring right now. And that has a lot to do with the work that this committee has done. I know that the GBA Plus focus was on the books since 1995, and your work has allowed us to move it forward further. And you will be receiving, Madam Chair, an interim report on how our monitoring and evaluation of these efforts are going so far.
Thank you.
Excellent. And the last 3 minutes with the minister goes to Sheila Malcolmson.
What a gift to have extra time. So, Minister, we've had a number of witnesses come before us on the matter of pay equity. To use the words of Vicky Smallman from Canadian Labour Congress, she said, quote, "Let's get this done" in 2017. Diana Sarosi from Oxfam said, when we asked her whether she could explain any rationale for why pay equity legislation is being delayed beyond what the committee or anybody asked for, she said, no, we haven't heard what the barriers are. Jennifer Howard from Public Service Alliance of Canada pointed out that there's no reason to delay till 2018 because the roadmap for the new law was provided in the 2004 Pay Equity Task Force report of the previous Liberal government. But this new budget had no specific benchmarks for narrowing the wage gap at all. So I'm sure that you're concerned, as I am, that women get equal pay for work of equal value. So why delay pay equity legislation until 2018, till the very end of your mandate?
I agree that the wage gap is an issue that needs to be addressed. Part of it is pay equity, and the Minister for Labour and the Treasury Board are focused on this commitment, as I am. And you're right, we do believe in equal pay for equal work, and that legislation alone, when it comes to pay equity, will not address this issue. We need cultural changes in the workplace as well as the supports for women. And we're committed to, Sheila, moving beyond the complaint-based approach to pay equity, to introduce pay equity legislation by late 2018. And we also know that other aspects of the wage gap needs to be addressed through things like parental and maternal leave, through opportunities to take leave to care for elderly parents, for example, through making sure that women and girls find themselves dreaming of and succeeding in roles where women and girls have traditionally not been seeing themselves in, and that includes STEM fields. So collectively, I believe these efforts will be steps in the right direction towards closing that wage gap, which I believe is unacceptable. And to do it right, I think the federal government is going to be leading other provinces and territories, which means that we have greater responsibility to ensure that we get it right, and the time that we need to do this is going to allow us to do just that.
Women have been waiting a very long time, so we certainly wanted it to move
agree.
faster.
I agree.
Nothing in the budget referred to the National Inquiry on Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women. Can you tell me how those tragedies can be addressed now, concurrently as your government is committed, without any budget allocation for them in this year?
Well, there is significant budget allocations in this budget. And as you know, the inquiry, as we heard from families of survivors and those women and girls who have gone missing, it was really important for the federal government to trust that process with an independent group of commissionaires, which is exactly what's happened. They've begun to set up, and they're going to be doing their work. They'll be providing us with a report later this fall, which we look forward to seeing and reviewing. In the meantime, we're investing in infrastructure in Indigenous communities, both off reserve and on reserve across the country. 18 boil water advisories have ended, with more work to do, but work that we're committed to. There's a focus on education. There's a focus on Indigenous leadership, which Status of Women has played a part in, and I look forward to coming back to this committee to talking about that. And I think that the work that we need to do around reconciliation, it's begun, but it's work that is going to require generational, intergenerational, cross-sectoral, multicultural work. And I know that the young leaders in this room and the young leaders that I've heard from across the country and at the UN certainly prioritize a stronger relationship with Indigenous peoples. And this generational work is in good hands with people here, but also the people who are waiting to take their seats.
Would the minister be willing?
You're out of time.
The committee,
I'm sorry,
just
you're
to
out of time.
give us that accounting of
Sheila, you're out of time.
where the money is going.
We have to wrap it up. Thanks so much, Minister. I want to say again that we appreciate the work that you're doing. You're definitely headed in a good direction. Many of us want to see more, but I know that that's coming. So thank you for joining us today. We will suspend briefly to give the Minister an opportunity to depart before we continue with our witnesses on the main estimates. We're ready to commence the second half where we're going to continue talking about the main estimates. And we are extremely lucky to have, I would say, very strong women from the Status of Women Department, Mina Ballantyne, Justine Ackman, Lucie Deforge, Annick Lapointe. Bienvenue. We so appreciate all the work that you ladies have done, and you must be very pleased to see the front and center gender analysis in the budget, and we look forward to doing our rounds of questions. We will start right away then with my friend, Miss, where is she? Miss Nassif. Or were they doing remarks?
No.
No.
Are they doing remarks?
I don't think so. Miss Nassif. Nous sommes prêts pour vous.
We're ready for you.
7 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very happy, just like other colleagues who last week participated in the UN meeting about the status of women. Let me start with a question regarding the ACS analysis or the SWC. And my question is Mrs. Ackman. Status Women Canada should receive additional $6.2 billion for the 2017-2018 financial year for the purpose of increasing research and assessment, and also widen regional presence, and also strengthen the gender-based analysis. So I'd like to know how this $6.2 million will be distributed amongst those 4 elements, including the Status of Women Canada capacity.
Precise financial questions to my colleague, Chief Financial Officer Annick Lapointe. But what I would say is that we have hired up fully in our gender-based analysis unit, and we have tackled our action plan, which has been shared with the committee, I believe, with full force, and been able to support other federal departments in our gender-based analysis efforts because of the money that we received in 2016. It has been a true leap forward for gender-based analysis in federal government work, as was demonstrated, and as the minister pointed out, it came out in the federal budget last night.
Bonjour, Madame la Présidente.
Good morning, Madam Chair. The distribution of the amount is the following: approximately $1 million for regional presence, $2.2 million for research and assessment, approximately $1 million for the gender-based analysis, and another $2 million for internal services for the purpose of increasing capacity. Here's another question. Based on the ministerial plan for 2017-18 for Status of Women Canada, one of the main risks which is linked to the work of that body is how difficult it is to make an assessment of social change. So if you want to reduce this risk, Status of Women Canada want to strengthen its staff and have new tools and data collection systems, and also analyze and assess yield. Who will be accountable for this, and what are the provisions made by Status of Women Canada for the purpose of reinforcing staff and develop tools and data collection systems? I'd like to have you to elaborate on this, please.
What we have put in our departmental plan is that Status, has the sort of lead for gender equality, but all the levers are in other departments. So we work with them to advance gender equality, as you know. So that is one of the things I think you're referring to in the departmental plan, which is where we talk about the fact that we're coming up with, research and evaluation in performance indicators to say how will we know that we are making advances in gender equality. So how will we know that the rates of violence are going down? That's through surveys that we're coming up with, through different tools like the GBA Plus tools and training that we're doing with different departments. And then the different departments are the ones who are tracking their indicators. So this is work that we all need to collectively get better at, and we're just starting that process now with the money through for research and evaluation unit that we established since the last budget. So I'm not sure if I understood your question properly.
Oui.
Okay.
Merci. Une autre question. Conditions féminines Canada.
Another question. We also help to mitigate the risk by holding consultations regularly with Canadians. What kind of consultations will you carry out?
Consultations with Minister Hajdu on the gender-based violence strategy, where we went across the country and heard from experts and stakeholders and survivors, which is informing our federal strategy on gender-based violence. We also participated in the pre-inquiry on the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, the pre-inquiry consultations with the three ministers that went across the country, Ministers Bennett, Hajdu, and Wilson-Raybould. So those are examples of some consultations. We consult with, for example, experts and stakeholders on the data gathering part that we're working on as part of the federal strategy. So we last September had a 2-day consultation with some of the leading experts and stakeholders for the gender-based, the gender statement that was in the budget. We held initial consultations pre-budget, and there's a plan moving forward in terms of improving this gender-based statement for the next budget. We also have the women's program evaluation, which is, every program is evaluated every 5 years. So we've consulted with over 700 people on the women's program in terms of, what's working, what's not working from the stakeholders' perspective. So those are the kinds of consultations that Status of Women Canada does. We also do international consultations. So for example, at the UNCSW, we're meeting with groups, we're meeting with other countries. The minister referred to the American states. We had a consultation with other countries from the American states, which was a first. So there's all these various ways that we consult.
Effectivement, moi j'étais à une des consultations que la ministre Hajdu.
Yes, I was present at one of your consultations, one of the minister's consultations in Montreal. There were a great many witnesses, but there's still a lot of work to be done, that's clear. I have another question.
Splitting our time with Ms. Vecchio.
Sure. Thank you very much. My question for you is with regards to internal services. And so this budget line has increased by about $2 million. I'm wondering if you can just help me understand why that increase, where that money is going to be spent.
So there's an increase to our internal services to support the additional staff that we're getting for like the research and evaluation. So the 38 new full-time equivalent. There's like 0.4 million that goes for communications to increase that capacity, and there's an increase to the minister's budget also because of there's a difference between a full minister's budget and a minister of state as we had before, or a minister that was in charge of other portfolios as well. So there's an increase there, and all of that goes under internal services.
Okay. And if I could just to elaborate on that, so internal services as defined by Treasury Board is, all the usual things you might think of like HR, IT, finance, and communications and the minister's office's budgets also go under that. So when we increased our size from last year's budget investment, so we need the people to, because we're a small agency, we need the people in HR, IM, IT to do that. We need the communications function, which was also in terms of our social media. We've never had before the last year or two social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn now, and the website to transmit information to everybody. So those are the internal services that since the past year we've increased. And as my colleague said, that having a full minister and supporting a full minister, which we've never had before. Before it used to be part of other portfolios. So for example, the last minister, previous to the last, had labor and status of women. So it was the bigger portfolio, the ESDC portfolio, which would support that function. Whereas now it's within our agency, so we were given more money to be able to do that.
Okay. My next question then has to do with, there was $6.2 million that was put towards an increase in research and evaluation. And so I'm just wondering, with regards to this, what exactly is going to be researched and evaluated with this money is the first question. And then the next question would be, is there any intent with regards to this to go further or delve further into particularly violence against women and girls and the root causes and how we thwart those?
My colleague, Justine, to answer.
Sure, thank you for the question. We are in the process right now of defining our future and multi-year research program that we'll be conducting using the Budget 2016 money. In the past year, we did use it to support our engagement strategy on a gender-based violence strategy. So right now, we're in that process. We are talking to experts, academics, Canadians about what will be in that research strategy, and it certainly will not be finalized until we've consulted quite widely on it. And in terms of violence against women and girls, absolutely, that would certainly be one of the themes. The research, I mean, this is the first time Status of Women has had a significant research budget in many years. And so we're kind of starting from scratch. We are very, very excited to do so, as are all of our stakeholders. We have already, on the violence front, we already did have this 2-day expert panel of academics and experts in the violence against women and girls field who came together to talk to us about the research gaps in this area. So we did that as part of our engagement last year. And so I would anticipate that the research strategy would reflect overall the priorities of status of women in leadership, women in the economy, but very much in violence as well to support the ongoing federal strategy.
Thank you. And just lastly, very quickly here, will the research be made public? Will all of the research done within the department be made public? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Just a quick question on this. With Bill C-24 not being passed yet in the House of Commons, are all ministerial budgets increased without the votes from Parliament?
I'm not sure.
Because
Bill C-24?
Maybe it might be with C-27. Which one is it? C-24 might be C-27. It could be 27. Sorry. To make all ministers of equal status, has that bill had royal recommendation?
I think we'd have to get back to you.
Yeah,
on
I
that one.
think. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I know it was in first or second reading in the House of Commons to make all ministers equivalent, and therefore I was just wondering if the ministerial budgets are passed without the consent of Parliament or not. So that's just one of my concerns.
So to get an increase on any type of budget for the organization, yes, we need the consent of the Parliament, and that's through the main estimates process. So the bill doesn't, or to make a minister, a full minister, it doesn't come with a budget. So there's a budget increase that is provided by Treasury Board, and if the department can't fund within its own reference levels, then we need to request the money to the finance department, and then through the main estimates process.
Okay, so I know that we did main estimates this week, and so there it was voted upon, but one of the greatest concerns we had was that the actual legislation to make the ministers of equivalent value has yet to be passed. So it's kind of the cart before the horse. That's why I'm just kind of asking specifically more on that question. So I didn't know what this true protocol was for ministerial budgeting when it had not passed through the House of Commons yet, the change of a person's portfolio.
So we'll take a look and get back to you, because I'm not sure, as Anik said, that it's usually through the main estimates, and this is the process coming through the this committee for status of women. But I'm not sure about that other bill, so we'll look into it and get back to you.
And yeah, I think C24 actually had more to do with CBSA. I think I've got 22, 23, and 24 on my brain, but it is another one. So thanks. Thank you.
Now we'll go to Ms. Malcolmson for 7 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the Status of Women panel. We had a witness testimony a couple of weeks ago. Kate McIntyre from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives talked about how different ways of categorizing voluntary versus involuntary work. And we were looking at this StatsCan table, which lists caring for children as a voluntary reason for a woman taking part-time work. So the witness that we had here said that her information was that last year more than 700,000 women in Canada were working part-time for what they called involuntary reasons, and one of those, and 275 of them cited the lack of access to childcare as a reason that they consider that to be involuntary. If there had been childcare, then they would have been able to work full-time because they didn't have access to universal childcare, then they had to work part-time. And as we know, this has compounding effects on women's place in the economy. So I'd like to hear whether the department is reconsidering that approach along with Stats Canada, so we can get good data on the reasons that women get pushed into part-time and precarious work.
No, thank you for the question. I think it would be helpful if we could get the exact name of the data and the study that you're actually referencing in your question. Stats Canada does a lot of work. We're working with them even right now on questions related to gender-based violence, for example. They do a lot of work to field the kinds of questions and how they're defined in the various surveys and data collection tools that they develop. But I think you raised a good point. Of course, Status of Women considers childcare critical in terms of a tool to address the wage gap. This government has just invested fairly heavily in childcare. We understand in our analysis that more women would enter the workforce likely if they had more choice around childcare. So your line of questioning is very much in line with the kind of analysis and policy advice that Status of Women provides to various federal departments. But I think on this precise question and data collection tool of Statistics Canada, it's certainly something that we could come back to that department on and have a discussion about.
Thank you. And that testimony was March 7 at committee. A related question is about the data collected about unpaid work done by women. And this was a real focus of the testimony at the United Nations last week, which had that really very strong focus on economic justice for women. So the latest census did not include questions about the unpaid work of women, despite calls by women's organizations to have that information collected. And because women perform the vast majority of unpaid work, we know as a government, as a country, we need that data in order to make good decisions. Can you tell me what the plans are that Status of Women might be having with Stats Canada to correct those gaps in data collection so that we can make more well-informed decisions?
Thank you. So we, as you know probably, that we work with Stats Canada, and we have this publication called Women in Canada, which has various chapters that come out over like a period of years. And I don't know the latest chapter that has just come out, but we work closely with Stats Canada. We have 20 departments who fund this along with us, and we pick various chapters, like unpaid work is something that I think we've either worked on. I don't have the latest information, but Yeah, so for example, the Girl Child was a chapter that just came out in February, and Women in Paid Work came out in March. I think unpaid work is, I don't see it on this list, but I know that we are talking to them about it. But this tool, Women in Canada, the publication, is apparently the most widely accessed Stats Canada publication, and a lot of people across Canada and even the world use it as a source of information for gender disaggregated data, and it's very, very useful. So, but we'll look into this unpaid work issue with StatsCan.
Great, thanks. And I think both of those areas, both unpaid work, precarious work, and access to childcare, given that people are accessing the document, we want to make sure that StatsCan is actually asking the questions that are relevant to the issues that face women today. I've got another, in a different area, around the National Inquiry into Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls. We know that the minister is, within her mandate letter, responsible for tracking progress on the inquiry. And we've been hearing quite a bit from women's organizations and human rights organizations concerned. In particularly, they've been asking for the legal path document that's been promised to be released in order to address some of the confusion around the inquiry process. And they are asking for clarity also about what happens with family members with missing loved ones who want to speak to the inquiry. Can you talk with us a little bit about the oversight process and what you're doing to address some of those constituent concerns? And I know that this is an independent inquiry, but ultimately this is the government, so we're looking for leadership here.
Yeah. So as you said, it is an independent inquiry, and the government has basically turned it over to the commissioners to conduct this inquiry in the way they see appropriate. So in terms of us tracking what the inquiry is doing, is we work together with the three departments at various levels, so at the working level, at the deputy level, and then at the ministerial level, where we're just sorting out right now how to get progress reports without undermining the independence of the inquiry. So we're not getting reports on this document that you're talking about that people are trying to get. We're getting sort of overall information in terms of, are they on track to produce that interim report that they've been asked to produce by the end of this year, and then the final report next year. Is the information flow, which is basically our colleagues at INAC who are providing them with all the information, if that is going along. And so we have the mechanisms in place to track progress while respecting the independence of the inquiry and not getting into the details of some of the issues that they're looking at.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Ms. Vandenbeld for 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. This is the first budget that has a full gender statement, which is, of course, the first step for GBA plus analysis on every aspect of the budget. And can you comment a little bit on, I know that going through that process actually highlighted the need for disaggregated data on gender and, of course, on the intersectional identities. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges and difficulties in being able to do a full gender-based analysis on the budget, on every aspect of the budget, and the need that we have more disaggregated data in order to do that?
Yes. Thank you. As I think I was telling some of the members before the committee started, that we are absolutely delighted from a public policy perspective to have this gender statement, and not as an add-on, but a chapter in the budget. So it really, really is historic, and there's a lot of work to do in terms of improving it for next year and the years after. But what it does show is that, the push by the Auditor General's report on GBA plus, your report on GBA, has really pushed, and the government's commitment to doing GBA and taking it seriously has really pushed everybody within the bureaucracy to take it seriously, where, they've made it mandatory for all MCs, and all Treasury Board submissions have to have GBA in the documents. And when you think of, the minister's mandate commitments, it's every part of this policy cycle has GBA. So from consultations to policy development to programs, because now we're going to have to look at it in the departmental results framework and the performance reporting and the indicators. So that work is just beginning. We're very, very early stages, but it's all moving in the right direction. But to have this kind of statement, which acknowledges that there are data gaps, there's no question about it. There are lots of data gaps, and we all need to do better, which we are going to try to do. But it's sort of it's the work of all these past years that has sort of led to this, and we're working with the OECD, which is mentioned in here as well, to do to help us with this, because with gender-based budgeting, learning from other countries, learning from the OECD, and internally we're working with finance very, very closely. And as the minister said, status of women, our phones are ringing off the hook because everybody wants to work with us now to say, how do you do a good GBA, and how do we collect the data? What are the diverse stakeholders that we should be talking to? So the system is in overdrive right now, but it's like, the analogy I use with our team is like a big ship with the government to try to turn it in all those facets, from, consultations to program evaluation at the end. It's going to take some time, but we're moving in the right direction, and there's no turning back now. To me, it's irreversible. So it's fantastic.
Thank you. And of course, the reason that we want to do GBA Plus, the reason that we want a gender lens on policy isn't for its own sake, but because we want to see in the end result an improvement in the material well-being of women and girls in this country. And when I went through the budget, I noted that having put a gender lens seems to have had a tangible result in terms of what is in the budget, not just in the areas like childcare and housing and homelessness, flexible working hours, but if you look at the section on international relations and trade, we look at tax policy, all of the sections, there is reference to women. Do you think that that's because we did do a gender lens on the budget? Is that a direct result of having looked at every area of the budget according to its impact on women?
Yes, so, when in the budget-making process, departments produce MCs, which now have to have the GBA, then the Department of Finance does its own analysis as well in producing this. So absolutely, it's because of all the GBAs that are being done, and there are some areas which we know aren't done as well as they could be or should be, but it's to me it's a direct result of it. And one of the things that we did last night was look at how many times is women mentioned in this budget, and I think it's 270. I don't have the exact figure, but it was like almost once per page. Is like 270 times the word woman was used throughout this budget. And we did some analysis of previous budgets where it was a much, much lower number. So all that's to say that, the differential impacts are being highlighted, and wherever they can't be, the need for data is being highlighted to say that, yeah, we need more data on this, and we need to figure out a way of getting it.
So this is actually a perfect case study in the impact that GBA Plus can have on policymaking. Now, Status of Women Canada, when we did our GBA study, GBA Plus, we talked about the challenge role of Status of Women, of Finance, of Treasury Board. Can you talk a little bit about the way forward in terms of how Status of Women Canada will maintain this momentum and make sure that now the legislation coming out of the budget and all of the recommendations and policies and legislation, how that will continue this gender lens on policymaking?
Thank you. So, my minister's mandate letter has 5 commitments which deal with GBA. So she has to report on that, which means that gives us the lever to go to other departments and ask them for, to work with us. And as I said, it's now like, we're in demand. We're working with everybody. There's a desire for everybody. We did a survey on GBA Plus. Status of Women Canada did a survey last year where 30 deputies reported to me to say, This is what we're, these are the barriers to GBA in our department. This is what we're doing. This is how we've organized ourselves to do this work. This is where we're going in terms of their minister's mandate letter commitments, where they're going to apply a GBA. I reported on the results of that to the Public Service Management Advisory Committee, which is I think 43 deputies chaired by the TBS, by Yaprak Baltacoglu, the Secretary to the Treasury Board. And so everybody is working together. So I think the momentum, there's no question that the momentum is going to be sustained as we move forward.
Very good. Yes, I agree there is momentum, and I'm happy that our committee was able to help push forward with the GBA Plus from the report and, of course, our challenge in the House. Now, with the main estimates, we have a standard script that we always read. Pursuant to Standing Order 81-4, the committee will now dispose of the main estimates for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2018, minus the interim estimates the House agreed to on March 21st, 2017. Do I have unanimous consent to deal with all the votes in one motion? All in favor? Very good. Shall all the votes under the Office of the Coordinator, Status of Women of the main estimates 2017-2018 carry? All in favor? Opposed? Passed. Shall I report these votes to the House? All in favor? Opposed? All right. I shall report them. And so, ladies, I would like to thank you again for your wonderful work. I'm sure you will be very busy. We are moving in the direction of good, and we will continue to support as the committee. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.